Right. Shalom, shalom. Send this out. It's gonna be real quick. I'm not gonna take a long time with this. While I'm here at the plantation. All right, first and foremost, I want to say call hello, Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shah, Ba'ashem, Rakaha, Kodash. Send double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of Great Millstone. Send much peace, love, and salutations to Akyam and also your Akwati out there pushing the glory of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shah, and sincerity and truth. It's the brother Ariala. And this is just a, want to talk about China, these tariffs, everything that's kind of going on in the global economy. Everything is moving us towards the MOTB in a much faster rate. Even the so-called trade war that's happening between the United States and all these other nations. But the main kind of centerpiece is the relations between America and China, just because China is the major kind of like the world manufacturing center, and is a beacon of growth over the last 3 decades. And so we see China puffing himself up to America, to Babylon the Great, and basically saying, hey, you need to come at us with respect, because we don't have to bow down to any of your bullying that you do in these other nations. And so, China's a little swagged up. But at the end of it, all of these economies are tied to each other, and America's fall would lead to China's fall as well. They're all tied together. And then that's why you can see, when you understand it, it's really a coordinated effort by all these major nations to shut down this current world system and move it into a new system, which is a digital system. Okay, that's really what they want this to be. Okay, so I just want to play a couple of clips. I put a couple of things and prompted Gronk to pull up some points to bring this thing on home. And Lord willing, this is edifying. I'm gonna start off with this clip.
Are we going to win the trade war with China? No, probably not. I do want to show you guys some videos of what's going on. First of all, China is not planning on backing down. Watch this.
China is fully prepared to fight to the very end, because the world is big enough that the United States is not the totality of the market in the world. So if the United States wants to go in that direction of completely shutting itself out of the China market, be my guest.
Yeah, and China will lose the US market, which, as I've said, is 15%.
We don't care. We don't care. China has been here for 5,000 years. Most of the time, there was no United States, and we survived. And if the United States wants to bully China, we will deal with the situation without it.
So this dude right here is swagged up about what China has built, and they really have built it off of the backs of the production of the United States and the consumerism of the United States. The United States has been running a trade deficit with China for decades, allowing China basically to get rich and build itself up. So now that China's kind of got its money up, it's established, trades with other nations, and they're bringing in money from all over the place. China is now swagged up. We don't care what America do, But when you understand it, China still needs the US dollar to be very strong in the market to continue to run the profits that it's running. Okay. because China is also living off of debt, just like America. They have a similar system of living off of abatya in the Hebrew. When you read in the Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, if somebody wants to put that on a comment board, that's basically living off debt. So we don't cow. We don't. That all of these nations' economies will crash together. That's why when you read in Revelation, the 18th chapter, when Babylon the Great goes down, all the merchants of the earth, they cry and they wail because of all the international trade that becomes dysfunctional when this place goes down. So all this tough talk from Moab, which is China, they're going to go down with Babylon the Great.
The United States, and we expect to survive for another 5,000 years.
When you hear Donald Trump say China wants a deal, it just doesn't know how to go about it. They're proud people. J.D. Vance talks about Chinese peasants. What do you make of their conduct in this respect?
If J.D. Vance thinks that he's dealing with the peasants in China, and I'm proud to be a descendant of the peasants, most of us are descendants of the peasants anyway, that's our tradition. We are farmers before. But now we are one of the leading industrialized economies in the world. So I'm sorry, J.D. Vance doesn't know what he's talking about. And therefore, I don't think there will be China-US dialogue unless the United States changes its attitude towards China. Deal with China as it is. Show respect to China. Show respect to the Chinese people. And don't try to impose your prejudice and biased view about China or about the rest of the world.
Okay, so we'll break that down a little bit, but I want to show you more of what is happening online that is making a ton of waves. There is this bag guy. This is shine. There's a rumor now that.
Okay, so she goes in to show this guy who's talking about, Hermes bags, or Gucci bags, all these bags that are promoted to be from, European nations, how they're actually being designed and manufactured in China, which who gives a shit, but basically it's showing how much, people say that, you're getting all these cheap goods from China, and they're showing like, look, bro, you got these $1,000 bags. These luxury goods are being manufactured in China as well, because it's cheaper to make it there, So, basically you got this back and forth going from the East and the West, and it's disrupting the market. And really what they want is to rinse the market of investors, people who come in, invested in the Trump administration, invested in gambling that the market is going to do better. All those people have pretty much been rinsed out of the market. They've been destroyed out of the market, okay? And that's what they want. But when you understand it, when you go to 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter, we read this all the time. The United States and China have been having these trade deals for the last few decades, and Asia has lifted itself up because of the Western system. That's why they hold so much U.S. treasuries. And those treasuries keep the Chinese currency at a place where it makes it cheaper to deal with China. If the dollar was to go down and the yuan was to go up and increase in its price, it will make the goods coming out of China much more expensive and less competitive in the market. Okay? Now, this is 2nd Ezra 15 and 46 in the GNT. It says, you, Asia, are to be pitied. You are doomed. You have enjoyed the splendor and glory of Babylon. All right? You have imitated her and dressed up your daughters to look like prostitutes to please and gratify your lovers, who have always lusted for you. And all the nations have lusted for China. Okay? Because you have imitated that vile prostitute in everything she has done or planned. This is China imitating the United States in the Western markets. Okay? The Most High has this to say: I will send disasters upon you. I will make you a widow and send poverty, famine, war, and epidemics to destroy your homes and bring ruin and death. The power of which you boast will wither like a flower when the burning heat is set upon you. Okay, so you see all this dude is flexing and we don't cow what they say. They're gonna go down just like Edom is gonna go down. Okay, they're not gonna. China's not gonna be the next great power in the world that takes over. All of these nations' economies are gonna crash whenever the whole system is decoupled, and they're trying to get ready to do the market of beast. All of these economies are gonna crash. And then it's going to just flow right into World War III and nuclear destruction. All right. And the scriptures tell us this. All right. It says, the power of which you boast will wither like a flower when the burning heat is set upon you. You will be a wretched, weak woman, so bruised, beaten, and wounded that you will no longer attract your wealthy lovers. Okay. So all of this is gonna befall Moab, just like it's set to befall Edom. Okay. All of it, man. Now, I put into Gronk. Some things. I said, how would the dollar crashing impact Chinese markets? This is what Gronk said. It says a crashing U.S. dollar would have significant impacts on the Chinese economy and markets, with both positive and negative effects depending on the context. Here's a concise analysis. Export challenges. A weaker dollar typically strengthens the Chinese yuan. Like I said, the dollar going down, the yuan, which is the Chinese currency, going up. It'll strengthen the yuan. It says making Chinese goods more expensive in global markets. This could reduce demand for Chinese exports, a key driver of China's economy, potentially hurting manufacturers and related stocks. Okay, now, when you look at China, the major companies that are coming from the West, from Europe and from the US, well, like we see the designer clothes, the designer apparel. Then you got all the software stuff from Apple to Microsoft, all the stuff that's being manufactured there. If the United States companies or corporations leave out of there, then people ain't gonna be going to China like that. See, they're tied together. These two nations have been tied together from ancient times. That's why the scriptures always tied Esau and Edom and Moab together. And they're going to go down together. It says higher import costs. Imports priced in dollars, oil, commodities, become more expensive in yuan terms, raising production costs and potentially fueling inflation. This could squeeze corporate margins and consumer spending, impacting Chinese markets negatively. Capital flows. A crashing dollar might deter foreign investment in Chinese markets, as a stronger yuan increases the cost of Chinese assets for dollar-based investors, right? So if your dollar is worth less and the yuan is worth more, all these people that hold dollars are not going to want to deal with China because it'd be much more expensive to deal with China. Because the value of your currency is going down and the value of their shit is going up. Does that make sense? It says, however, if global investors see China as a safe haven, capital inflows could rise, supporting markets. Debt relief. Chinese companies with dollar-denominated debt would benefit, right? Because the cost of that debt is going down because it's based in dollars if the dollar is crashing. As their debt becomes cheaper to repay in yuan, this could ease financial pressures and boost certain sectors like real estate or infrastructure. Currency reserves. China holds massive US dollar reserves, right? US treasuries. A dollar crash would reduce the yuan value of these assets, potentially prompting Chinese central banks to intervene to stabilize the yuan, which could strain reserves and affect market confidence. Global demand risk. A dollar crash could signal U.S. economic weakness, reducing global demand for Chinese goods. This could hit export-heavy sectors, potentially dragging down Chinese equity indices like the CSI 300 or Hang Seng. Okay? So basically, the U.S. dollar crash would make the whole world economy crash. China being one of the major ones. Okay? Big time. All right, so I was watching this video here, and they was talking about it, and it's titled, Why China Actually Wants a Strong Dollar. I'm going to play about 3 minutes of this. Y'all listen to this.
You had to take on exchange rate risks to use the dollar in payments and blah, blah, bullshit. Yes, okay, but our inflation never even got close to that, ever. Like, it's not, and like now inflation's back down anyway. Like, it never got close to the level where it was going to cause that sort of problem. But the reason people would want to shift away from using the dollar as payment has nothing to do with inflation. It has everything to do with geopolitics. Everybody saw our financial sanctions on Russia, and they're like, what if they do that to us someday? And so they're like, okay, well, let's try to use the yuan. They're not able to do it because China doesn't actually want the yuan to be used internationally, because that will cause them to lose a lot of control over the value of the yuan, and they really, really highly prize their control over the value of the yuan.
Right. So he just said China doesn't want the yuan to be used internationally because they want to control the value of the yuan. Why? Because China wants to keep the yuan at a certain level so the price of their goods and services is cheap. That's why people run to China, because it's cheaper. If the value of the yuan if the demand for the yuan and the price of the yuan is going up, that makes them less competitive because their stuff gets more expensive. Okay? So all this talk about the yuan and China's gonna be the next, no, they like where they at. China likes where it's at. They eating right now. Okay?
They really jealously guard that power. And the more internationalized the currency becomes, the less power they have over the value of their currency. Because the more capital inflows and outflows will happen, and then they have to like do more sterilization and more capital controls and more bullshit control stuff to like stop that from happening, right? So the more internationalized their currency becomes, the less control they have. So they don't really want it to be used. They don't really want to internationalize their currency. They say they do, but then they realize they don't. Every time they start to do it, they realize they don't, they clamp down, and then, Russia will try to use yuan, but honestly, Russia's use of yuan has plunged. And partly that was because the Chinese banks are afraid to do business with Russia. So yeah, so basically, if people switch to the yuan, by the way, people should switch to the yuan more. China's currency should be more internationalized. America can't sort of like hold up the whole global financial system by ourselves anymore. We need China to help. We need China to internationalize their currency. They just don't actually want to.
Interesting. And so are we heading towards a world in the next decade or two, in your opinion, that the US won't be the reserve currency in the way that we understand it today? Or how do you expect that? Like, are we having a multipolar?
I mean, I would like it if we were less of the reserve currency. I think if we're not the reserve currency is not going to be yuan.
There's going to be zero.
Well, people could hold fewer reserves, for one thing. That could happen. But also, people could hold euros. People can hold gold.
Is there a certain number by which, like, when would we know when we're no longer the reserve currency? Is it like a percentage?
Early 90s, we went down to like, I think 30% of international reserves.
And now are we like 40 or something?
No, we're like a little under 60.
Oh, interesting.
So like if you look at, let me actually pull that up.
What happened in the 90s?
Currency composition of official. Now this doesn't include gold, like the dollar. Like like a guy, running, he's a very like blue collar working class dude running as an independent for Congress in the Midwest, came out to solicit some money from Silicon Valley people. And then we met the cafe and we talked for a while. And he was like, I think China's ultimate goal is to destroy the dollar. And I like, that's their plot. That's China's plot to take over the world, to destroy the dollar. It's like, no, The opposite. China wants the dollar to be strong so they can sell us as much.
You see, China wants the dollar to be strong so they can sell. See, making this point. All these guys, all these nations' economies are tied to each other. They've been in bed with America for too long. It's too late. The infection is in all the world economies. These nations know this. That's how you know it's a concerted effort amongst the elites to crash the economy. So-called crash. I'm using air quotes. They're getting ready to come in with this new digital system. All of the stuff you see is just a show. All the stuff in alt media is just clickbait. It's all bullshit.
That's China's plot to take over the world, to destroy the dollar. It's like, no. The opposite. China wants the dollar to be strong so they can sell us as much stuff as they want, and so they don't have to internationalize their own currency and lose control over their own currency. Like, China wants a strong dollar.
This is what they talk about when they refer to dumping, or is that something different?
That's something different. But yeah, I mean, like, like spiritually, it's similar because they want to sell as much stuff as possible, so they're the only country that makes anything. That's what China wants.
And is this what they want in a long-term way, or is it kind of like an interim thing?
No, long-term.
Yeah.
They want to be the make everything country. They want to be the only source of industrialization while everyone else just farms. And they've said that.
What does the future hold for business? Ask 9.
Boom. And so that's what you got going on. And so, when you read these prophecies, that's why Moab and Esau and Edom are so tied together, man. They're tied together at the hip. Esau and Edom gets linked to Sodom and Gomorrah, and China does too. Matter of fact, I typed this into Gronk. I said, what are some prophecies concerning Moab that are similar to Edom? It says in the Bible, Moab and Edom, as neighboring nations, often hostile to Israel, face similar prophetic judgments for their pride, idolatry, and aggression. Okay? Let me read some of this. It says, prophecies against Moab. Isaiah 15 and 16, you can go to it. It says, judgment for pride and arrogance. Moab is condemned for his haughtiness. In Isaiah 16 and 6, prophecy foretells desolation with cities like Ar and Kir destroyed. Swift destruction. This judgment is rapid, right? Lamentation and shame, refugee crisis, agricultural devastation. Jeremiah 48. So, you read Jeremiah 48, it talks about Moab, and then 49, it talks about Esau, Edom. And then I believe 50, it goes into Babylon, which all of these guys are tied together. It says total devastation, all right? Pride as cause, Moab's arrogance, military defeat, exile and shame, partial restoration, right? Judgment for sin. Moab is judged for desecrating Edom's king's bones and Amos. Here in Ezekiel 25, it says judgment for mockery. Moab is judged for sin. Judah is like all nations, denying the Most High's chosen people, right? Invasion and loss. Moab will be given to people of the east, right? In I believe in this one is likened them to it puts them together. Yeah, look at that. Ezekiel 25, and then look at that. Then it talks about Edom. They're always together, man. Right? Thus saith the Lord power, in verse 8, thus saith the Lord power, because that Moab and Seir do say, behold, the house of Judah is like unto all the heathen. Therefore, behold, I will open the side of Moab from the cities, from his cities which are on his frontiers, the glory of the country. Bejesemoth, Baal-Meon, and Kirathael. Right? So all these judgments are coming, okay? And are set to come. Similar destructions. right? So it's prophecies against Edom's similarities. Isaiah 34, total destruction. Like Moab, Edom faces utter destruction with its land turned into a wasteland. Isaiah 34, 5 through 10, right? Divine wrath. Both nations are judged for their defiance of the Most High with vivid imagery of ruin, right? Moab's fields wither, Edom's streams turn pitch. Shame and mourning. Edom's downfall, like Moab's, brings disgrace with no joy left. Jeremiah 49, see? It says, pride and arrogance. Edom's wisdom and pride, like Moab's, leads to its fall. Jeremiah 49:7. Complete devastation. Both nations' cities are ruined. Their people exiled and their gods powerless. Military collapse, exile and shame, no restoration. Look what this says. Unlike Moab's hinted restoration, Edom's judgment is final in most texts. See, Esau is going to get completely wiped out. Moab is going to go into captivity and they'll be around, but eventually Esau is going to get wiped out, completely wiped out. All right. So key similarities: pride as its core sin, both under the pride and haughtiness. Both Moab and Edom are condemned for arrogance, trusting in their wealth, wisdom, and geography. Total devastation. Prophecies emphasize the ruin of cities, loss of agriculture, the collapse of military power. Shame and exile. Both nations face public disgrace and displacement, with survivors fleeing or taken captive. All of them are going to get taken captive. They're going to go into captivity underneath the nation of Israel. Right? Divine judgment for hostility. Their opposition to Israel/Judah incurs the Most High's wrath. Vivid imagery. Prophecies use similar language: fire, wailing, barrenness. Right? So all of these things are going to happen to Moab and Esau as we literally run towards the market of beast prophecy. Ain't going to be no transition where Russia and China are ruling the world and they live. No. When the United States and the Western economies crash, the whole world economies are going to crash. All of them together. It's going to be just a shit show. Complete shit show. So I wanted to highlight that and kind of touch on that because some of these people get things twisted. I was going to pull this, but the brother put it, which is good. So, salvation of the elect, Shalom. Psalms 2:1. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, and he skips down to verse 4. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh, the Lord shall have them in derision. Complete derision, man. All right? Complete derision. So when you see all these nations getting swagged up, America's losing the trade, the tariff, the trade war. All of these nations are losing. They're all tied. They all went to bed with America. It's too late. They all drank the Kool-Aid. It's too late. It's over. So, Lord willing, that was edifying. I just wanted to touch on this, man. We're going to see these economies be volatile, and then they'll figure it out. They just want to get the people in a certain state of fear so they can control them whenever they're getting ready to roll out this MOTB system. Okay? The Lord willing, that was edifying, man. Once again, I'll say, Call Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai by Hashem Rakadash. Double honor to the apostles, elders, and bishops, great millstone. Much peace, love, and salutations to y'all. Came out there pushing the word of Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai. Sincerely, true. Shalom.